Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled Life Sciences European Workforce Outlook, What's Driving Progress, which is hosted by GI Life Sciences, the specialised division of GI Group Holding, which focuses on delivering tailored recruitment and workforce solutions to life science companies. I'm Danielle Myles, and I'm a senior editor at FDI Intelligence, which is a specialist publication within the Financial Times. And I'm very pleased to be moderating today's event. This event marks the launch of the Life Sciences European Workforce Outlook white paper by GI Life Sciences and Lightcast, which is a specialist in labour market analytics. This white paper reveals workforce trends and broader shifts in the industry, which provides companies with a clear picture of where Europe's life sciences industry is heading and the talent opportunities and challenges they face along the way. This white paper includes how life sciences have become a huge economic driver within Europe, with employment growth actually outpacing other industries since the pandemic. However, it also reveals some demographic challenges facing the industry, such as an aging workforce, a gender divide, and a skills gap, given that the skill sets in demand continue to change, and the growing role of new technologies such as artificial intelligence. To discuss these and many more topics in today's webinar, we have a fantastic lineup of panelists who each have significant and diverse significant experience regarding life sciences within Europe. First, we have Tony Goonan, who is International Sales Director at GI Group Holding.
Hey, everyone.
Next, we have Franck Teboul, Country Manager of GI Group Holding France.
Hello, everyone.
Welcome, Franck. Next, we have Emilie Chitra, who is the HR lead for Haleon, Switzerland, which is a world-leading consumer health company.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Hi, Emilie. Thanks for being here.
Thank
and finally, we have Carlos Hilal, who is the research lead at Lightcast. Welcome, Carlos.
Thank you. Hey, everyone. Good to be here.
Thank you all very much for joining us today. Before we get started, I have one quick housekeeping announcement, which is that we are going to leave 5 to 10 minutes at the end of the webinar for audience Q&A. So at any time during the event, please send in your questions using the Q&A function, which I hope you can see, and we'll get through as many questions as we can at the end. And with that, let's start the discussion. And Carlos, I wanted to start with you. You led the data analysis for this report. So based on this research, can you start by providing us with an overarching snapshot of the state of Europe's life science industry from a workforce perspective? So for example, how is it growing? What types of occupations are most in demand? And what are the other sort of broad changes that we see across the board?
Of course, yeah, I'd be happy to. So just to start, I just think it's a really interesting time to be talking about the life sciences sector in general in Europe and globally. Just because the life sciences sector in the start of the year is in a sort of a melting pot. There's an amalgam of opportunities that we're facing, and this is good news. And at the same time, there's different synergies and challenges to discuss that are standing in the way of these opportunities, causing investors to look at the industry in a cautionary way. But at the same time, there is momentum and there is a huge opportunity for this year for life sciences. So just to start with some context on how the European life sciences sector has been doing throughout the past years. So we've seen a colossal post-pandemic growth for the life sciences industry, specifically in the EU, and that has outpaced many different industries and the economy as a whole. So in 2023, we saw a small correctional dip, but that is not any cause of worry. And some industries had a bigger correctional dip, and that was due to fading post-COVID growth. However, in 2024, the industry produced in the EU 585 billion euros, which again is better than most key industries in the EU and the broader EU economy in general. Now, in conjunction with that, we've seen very high returns on investment on life sciences and higher profit margins for key life sciences players, which signals that the industry has been doing great in the past few years, especially post-pandemic. And this is mainly and partly due to the resilience and the response of the sector to two very large demand shocks, which were the COVID demand shock, and as well we're seeing a demographic drought in the EU, so an aging society that is causing higher demand shocks in the life sciences sector. So the responsiveness and the agility and flexibility of the sector, as well as the increase in the rapidity of innovation in the sector in the EU, combined allowed the sector to flourish, as well as in the face of supply chain hurdles. That is very important to mention. So this responsiveness to these demand shocks and the success behind them has caused, as partly why the sector has been doing great. Now, in terms of opportunities as well, we've seen AI proliferating around business, around different sectors. However, in the life sciences sector, it is still in its infancy, sorry. And the future potential of AI is also something that is causing market observants to look at, specifically in the EU, to see how this potential can grow, and specifically the innovation and the rapidity and the increase in rapidity of innovation as well is something that is a huge potential. However, with these potentials come challenges that we need to address, and it would be very important to talk about, just so that we can understand what are the signals that are allowing these opportunities to flourish or that might hinder them. So the main four challenges that need to be addressed. The first one is the intensifying regulations, not necessarily bad, but it is causing a slower growth in the life sciences industry in the EU. Two, fragmented investment. So as we've seen, as I've mentioned, like there's some cautionary approach, and this might change in 2025, but it was the case for the past 2 years. And then three, supply chain challenges, which is honestly a problem that is affecting many sectors globally, not just in the EU. And fourth, which I think is the most important to talk about, which is the critical skills shortages, since the workforce is the backbone of the life sciences industry in the EU. And it would be very important to talk about how demand is changing, what's increasing, and what's decreasing.
Carlos, thank you. That's a great introduction to kick things off. Indeed, there is a lot of good news in there that you've spoken about. There's the growth, there's the innovation, there's the return on investment. But yes, obviously these workforce issues are presenting challenges, as you said. And from the white paper, there are three that stand out. Recruitment challenges generally, the aging workforce, and the gender divide. Now, for the rest of this event, our other panelists are going to do deep dives into this area. But just to kick things off, what are the most important data trends underlying each of these three themes?
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Danielle. So let's start with demand, as it is one of the most important. So in the latest 12 months, so in the year 2024, we've seen a new wave of very high demand for operational talent. So think anything that's related to technician, to support roles, to more on the manufacturing side. So we've seen a growth of 37% compared to a modest 7% for more advanced research roles, which signals that employers last year in 2024 have changed in terms of what they need from the workforce. And we can see here as an example, so the most demanded job in the EU with 92,500 postings was for laboratory technicians, and that is threefold higher than the second most demanded job, which was pharmacy director. And on the right-hand side, we can see that there was an impressive and very rapid growth in demand compared to previous years for operational talent, such as radiation therapists, surgical assistants, medical assemblers, and cancer registrars. Another trend that we see as well is rapid growth in the change of skill demand, which is something that might be alarming in the sense of skill shortages, since the employers are not being able to find the new skills that are being demanded in the market, which is something that should be addressed with innovative strategies from employers. Now, if you do a bit deeper dive into the subsectors that are pertinent to the life sciences industry, we can see that we have three main groups, three main subsectors, which is the research and medical analysis, biopharma, and medtech. So research and biopharma dominate the job posting and employment sphere when it comes to life sciences in the EU. But medtech has seen a high growth in the recent years, and especially in Germany. So we can see that 37% of employment demand in Germany is related to medtech. And then a noticeable biopharma hub is Ireland, where we've seen a very high data of a very anytime there's like any insights that are related to biopharma, Ireland is one of the top that are popping up. And when the United Kingdom has a very high number of demand postings in the research and medical analysis field with 87%. Moving forward, when we look at the European outlook, so country by country, we have the dominating powerhouses when it comes to life sciences in Western Europe. However, we've seen sustained but slower growth when it comes to the life sciences. Denmark has very impressive growth in terms of GDP, so money output as well as employment growth. However, one very important thing to talk about is the growth in the life sciences sector in Eastern Europe. So we've seen since 2021 very impressive growth for a number of Eastern European countries, the largest ones being displayed here, such as Bulgaria, Hungary, Greece, and Latvia. And moving forward, this will be very important to keep an eye on, specifically with the discussion and the trends of increasing manufacturing and nearshoring in Europe. So that might signal that these markets might grow due to cost advantages and also a lot of potential and opportunities that could be leveraged in these markets. So that would be something that is important to look at. So demographic trends, there's two main themes that we saw that are most important to address, and that is gender and age diversity. So for gender, there's a good representation of women in life sciences industry. However, this comes with two caveats. The first one is that the representation is high in the workforce in total. However, when we see a career advancement into more managerial positions, that's where the representations tend to start decreasing, which is something that needs to be addressed for more representation in these more higher seniority roles, as well in the manufacturing and medtech sector. So we can see here that it's just in the subsector of medtech, it's just 24% representation for women. However, it goes up to 40% when we are looking at research and medical testing. Finally, one very important thing to discuss is that the life sciences industry in the EU is one that is aging the most. And that is very important to address because when you have an industry that is aging, you have a loss of knowledge, but at the same time, if you're not hiring a lot of entry, like younger workers, it also adds to the skill shortage that we see in the market. So in a nutshell, that was the main insights that we saw in our research study. And yeah, that's it for me. Just as a final thought here is that to be able to address all these challenges, it would be very important to approach this with the innovation and strategy. So it's not one size fits all. It's just that we employers need to be strategic and rethink how they can approach these challenges differently and based on their needs as well. Thank you, Danielle.
Carlos, thank you very much. That was great to have that provides the data backdrop, which will frame the rest of our discussion. So thank you very much for that. And it's notable that you laid out there at the end how employers need a multi-pronged strategy to foster a strong workforce and talent pipeline. And attracting talent is part of that. And that's the first topic that we're going to delve into going forward. So because recruitment challenges are obviously one of the big takeaways of the white paper. To take that forward, Franck, I was hoping to turn to you. There's a growing mismatch between job demand and workforce capabilities, as we've heard. And this has a number of drivers. First of all, we have rising demand for specialized talent. But there's also a sharp uptick in demand for operational workers. And part of this is down to the supply chain disruptions, which we continue to see since the pandemic, and which have led companies to localize some of their manufacturing activities. Franck, I wanted to ask, do these recruitment challenges align with what you're seeing and experiencing? And what are the solutions that you can propose?
Well, I will try to give solutions. Thank you, Danielle. That's absolutely our day-to-day issues with the client is to build, rebuild, elevate the workforce and how to have a strategy regarding that. And as you said, we have two main challenges. The first one is with for the production, I would say, for bioproduction, especially, which is exploding everywhere in Europe. And the second point is for the scarcity of white colors. Okay, it's not growing like hell, as you said, Carlos, but I mean, it's really a scarcity everywhere since 10 years I'm in this business. So I would like to focus, first of all, on the bioproduction issues with operators. The solution we have built with part of our client is really to rethink this part. In a resume, I would say, forget the CV, forget the background, and stuck on the skills. So, for example, last month we built with a big client. It was a new plant. Then we were looking for a lot of operators in bioproduction. And as you know, the bioproduction, we can find the similar way in other environments. Other environments like, for example, agri-food production, like, for example, dairy production, and so on. In this constrained environment, you have the similar approach, the similar rules. So what we have made is we have looked after other industry to find this kind of operators, to skill or to reskill them, and to make them okay, I would say, to enter into the pharma bioproduction. And it was a very interesting way to really extend the possibility in terms of finding the right workforce for this new constraints environment. But it's the same also for more technical roles. For example, you have the same with aeronautical. We work with a very major airplane industry, and we have the shift of some of their workers to go for pharma industry or medtech, for example, as well. It's really similar. So the point is to attract them and to reskill or to skill them to give the trainings to make them available for the pharma or the medtech environment. So that's for me the first challenge. The second challenge is for, as we said, is for really the white collar roles. For the white collar roles, to my opinion, the challenge is a bit different for the pharma industry. The point is attractiveness. How to attract this population? How to make them, how to be sexy enough, I would say, to attract them into pharma. As we said, for most of the big pharma, not for you, Emilie, of course, but for most of the big pharmas, it's huge company. It's big company. It's what I mean. It's big machines. It's quite heavy in terms of environment. And the first thing for me is to rebuild like an entrepreneurial culture, an entrepreneurship culture, like more a startup. You see what I mean? Smaller clusters, more agile, faster. And like that, these people, especially young graduates and so on, they feel they have more power. They have more a possibility to change the way they can develop an entrepreneurial culture. That's really the point, and to find this agility. But the other things is we all know millennials, and we know what they want to find in our companies. They want more flexibility, and that's really something that we have to take care to attract them. So again, they are looking for alternative benefits. For example, they want their employer to have let's say, a look after their holistic wellness. You see what I mean? And so that's really an important point as well, to work on that. And I think the HR in pharma are looking after that. It's sometimes very difficult to change also I would say, the structure, but to rethink that, that's also the way for me, the best way to reattract these high-skilled people in a white-collar environment.
Great, Franck, thank you. That's some great suggestions there, including focusing on the transferable skill sets and also making sort of more of a startup culture within big pharma.
Exactly.
Very, very interesting. Emilie, I wanted to turn to you. How does this sort of align with or differ to what you're seeing within your company? Do you see this gap within the skill sets and what are some of the potential solutions that you would suggest?
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. And definitely, the words of Franck or the analysis of Carlos resonates to me. So in Lyon, in Switzerland, one of our main challenge is really to recruit our operational workforce for our manufacturing site. There has always been, historically in the area we are operating, stability in the business, in all the life science and the kind of pharma, consumer healthcare environment. So that means that usually experienced older workforce have the tendency to stay many years in the same company with the same employer. Doesn't mean that they stay at the same role, but at least they are loyal to their employer, which means that we need to find other ways of recruiting experienced people or talented people. So it means that we need to look across the younger, less experienced demographic. At Haleon, we don't really see that only as a challenge, but also as an opportunity, because it means that you can really provide to the population, this population, their first job, which means that people are then, your ambassador, they are motivated to stay in your company and really building the next year generation. There are things that we are doing from a kind of way of attracting our talent. It means that we need to think differently, like Franck was saying. When we talk about benefits, it's not like before, where it was all about like your annual base salary. No, it's things that makes your life better. So something that has been introduced is our quite attractive and progressive policy related to parental leave. So we are offering, despite the gender you are, a 6 months parental leave. Then we also say, okay, there are moments in life where you need to take care of others. So there are caregivers policy that allow people to take some time off to take care of the people they love. We also say that we need to attract people who are very much interested in being responsible in the way they work, they are. So we have quite a strong incentive when it comes to the commuting to our office. We also have a gym, we have a cafeteria. We also have something which is a chance here, mainly in the Swiss-French part of Switzerland. It's that we are 15 minutes away from France, meaning that we have a larger talent pool by being able also to recruit cross-border. So I will say there is no magic. It's all little things that at the end of the day still allow us to fill the roles that are our openings, but it's a continuous reinvention of being listening to the needs of the world around us.
Thank you, Emilie. Yes, some very sort of practical insights there. And also something that you and obviously Franck spoke about as well, obviously talking a lot about millennials and how we engage and retain them. Our next section of the webinar is actually looking at the other end of the workforce spectrum. We're looking at Europe's life science aging workforce. So this is obviously in line with Europe's aging population more broadly, but 1/3 of the industry's workers, as the report laid out, are over 50, which presents both challenges as well as some opportunities for companies. So Tony, I was hoping to turn to you now. How should companies be responding to this trend to either expand this so-called prime age workforce of 25 to 49-year-olds, but also capitalize on the knowledge and experience gained by some of these older workers?
Thanks, and I think it's a really interesting question. Clearly, it's got to be a kind of a dual approach. If we think for a second about where we are and sort of where the work environment is, it's a very interesting time to work in life sciences, in that the older generations, which if you may or may not have noticed, I would class myself as fitting into the kind of early over 50s generations, grew up with computers and grew up with technology, and it's been embedded into their way of life. But the way that the older generations communicate is very different to the way that the younger generations communicate. This potentially causes us some challenges in the workplace when we look at retaining the older workforce for longer, but also introducing younger workers into the workplace. To give you an example in terms of the differences in communication skills and styles, my children, I have a great relationship with them. They both still live at home. When they are out of the house, so usually any time other than meal times, if I need any information from them or to ask them a question, the first thing I do, I pick up the phone, I give them a call. And what happens? Nothing. No response. They don't answer the call, but what they will do is respond at a later date, sometimes within around 5 minutes, and I get some form of message. That's either a text message or, more commonly now, a Snapchat message or whatever the other instant messaging program might be. That to me indicates that one of the things that we've got to do in order to be able to bridge the generational gaps is to be able to provide methods of communication that both ends of the generational divide are comfortable with. And it's interesting in that anecdote, because when I first thought of it, I thought, and it happens every time. Every time I ring, they send me a message. But I've never actually made the leap to go, well, actually, maybe I should just message them. And they've never made the leap to go, well, maybe we should just call back. And I think this comes into play when we look at what we're trying to do is retain the existing workforce, but we're also trying to introduce new people into the workforce. And let's first turn. I like the phrase that Franck said: how do we make life science sexy? How do we make people want to work in life science? I think, first of all, at governmental level, there's a lot more that could be done in regards to encouraging the core skills of science, technology, engineering, and maths. It was certainly something that in the UK was a real focus maybe 10 years ago, but due to financial constraints seems to have really waned and is no longer a topic that's at the top of people's thoughts. I think as an industry, what we can do is to engage with children and young people as early as possible, to let them know about the life sciences industry, to say, hey, here is a career where you really can make a difference. The younger generations are noted for their social conscience and wanting to make a positive contribution to the world. And it's really in the life sciences industry that there is the greatest ability to be able to do that. Things like solving, world poverty or curing diseases is something that can be accessed via the life sciences industry. So I think the first prong of the attack is about engaging with younger people, letting them know that the career path can be set for them in the life sciences industry, particularly focusing on women and girls in order to be able to increase the uptake. We've seen from the statistics that we are better than some of the other industries, but there still is a long way to go, certainly in regards to the leadership and more technical roles. Also, when we think about young people entering the workplace, well, what do we do with them then? Because what we need to do is we need to make sure that we've created an environment that is comfortable for them to work in. Otherwise, we've got the talent acquisition, but we don't have the retention. And Franck already alluded to some of these points, and Emilie mentioned some of them as well. In terms of making the workplace more accessible for the younger generations, we have things like flexible working patterns, paying more attention to people's work-life balance, to their mental health, to their well-being. I draw another example. Franck mentioned about, the sort of the huge companies really needing to be more agile and more entrepreneurial in their outlook. When I first started working, my first role was for a really, really large insurance company. That was a big thing because it was a big company. It was seen as prestigious to go and work for a big company. But I think that focus has switched entirely the other way now, whereby it isn't that the company's really attractive. The people feel they are really attractive. The younger people feel they have got an awful lot to be able to offer, an awful lot to be able to give. They want to feel nurtured and they want to feel supported in the working environment. So some of the changes and the adaptations that we've got to make in order to bring younger people into the life sciences industry risk potentially alienating the prime workforce, the people who have the skills and have the experience. And that, I think, is where we bridge the gap between the two. In regards to collaboration between the generations. In terms of retaining the older workforce, I think it's key to be able to engage with your workers, to be able to find out what is their career path. Different countries have different retirement ages. I think some people are looking to maybe wind down a little bit in their career as they reach, the normal retirement age. But we see with the so-called longevity dividend, people are living for longer, they are healthier for longer, they are contributing to work for longer. And there are people who wish to stay engaged with work. Maybe that's exactly in the current format as they're doing in a full-time position. Maybe it's about offering the skilled and experienced workers the chance to leave work but return on a consulting basis. Or maybe it's about offering those workers the chance to reduce the amount of hours that they're working, to have a more gradual step into retirement. The key and crucial thing, though, is to be able to get these two generations together. And to do that, that's not just as easy as setting up a mentorship program or setting up collaborative opportunities for the two different sort of age groups. It's about making sure that each age group is comfortable. And those methods of communication for how those age groups are comfortable is probably going to be different. So again, to give you an example, the classic thing, we have mentorship within our organization. And one of the key things is to meet face to face, it's to meet online, it's to have a direct dialogue together. That's really comfortable for me because that's my kind of preferred method of communication. Some younger workers can find that more of a challenge or sometimes a conflict circumstance when I don't see any conflict at all, and creating opportunities whereby there's maybe an online platform, it could be an online chat, it could be a method of being able to, even on a one-to-one basis, just sharing ideas and messages with each other without that necessarily being on a face-to-face basis. For the older generation, that's a little bit more distance because why would you do that? But it works for the younger people. So I think it's about finding the sweet spot in the middle. The only other thing that I would say, and there might be time to develop it, I'd love to touch on it later on, but in regards to AI and in regards to technology and how the European economy has braced technological advances, we're behind. We touched on it in the stats with Carlos. If we look at the amount of super tech companies that have come out of Europe in the last say 50 years that have achieved more than 100 billion in market capitalization, I can't think of many. I can't think of any, but I can think of lots of the American ones. So the developments in AI are coming from the likes of Meta, the likes of Google, even the open AI with the investments from the other companies like Microsoft, etc. We're already behind, and we're behind because in Europe we don't have that overriding governmental structure that maybe we see in China or we see in the United States. So that, I think, is an issue at governmental level, that we need to make sure that regulation doesn't prevent inward investment. And the other thing, which I don't think I've got time to cover, but AI, we're banding this phrase around about AI, as if it's not the most transformative thing that's ever going to happen to the world. We had the move from hunting to farming. We then had the ability with farming to create specializations with human society. That moved us on to the Industrial Revolution, where we were able to replace human labor with the labor of machines, with further specializations that has allowed us eventually to computerize and to digitalize. And I thought that was the big thing that would happen in my lifetime. I thought the computerization of the world was the big thing. And it isn't, because all computerization did was we just created an online library. We got all of the digital knowledge that the world was able to create, and we put it in a format that computers were able to understand. We've now got, limited AI technology that is just focusing on one or two specific tasks. Take OpenAI, which is, a really famous example with ChatGPT. We're now at the point that we think that these large language models have learnt pretty much everything there is to learn from the internet. They are able to bring that information back to us in a format that's much more easy to digest than it is with the traditional model of going through the librarian or with Google. But where we will move to next, and the exciting part with AI, is not this task-specific AI. It's when AI expands across everything. We're currently able to use AI in things like medical imaging. Already, we are able to produce higher quality results by using AI for detecting early stage cancers than we can do on a human basis. But the transformation that's going to happen to the industry and the transformation that's going to happen to the world is going to be phenomenal. And it's going to happen in the life science industry because this is where the majority of the investment is going, because this is where the greatest advancements to human society are going to come from.
Tony, thanks very much. Yes, sort of touched on lots of broader points as well that are relevant, not just to life sciences, for sure. You had some very astute and sort of practical observations in there as well about sort of needing to meet in the middle in terms of this intergenerational divide. And Emilie, I wanted to ask you, from your position within Haleon, how do you see these issues playing out, and what are some of the recommendations that maybe the company is working with to try and bridge these gaps?
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. And first of all, I would like to say that that's a topic that is really close to my heart. I'm still grateful and thankful of the experience I had in my early career, where I was able to interact with people more experienced that really spend the time for me. So just before, I was saying that we have people staying for many years in their role or in the same company in our sector. But at the same time, there were also several restructuring that happened across Switzerland, which means that in the market, there were some older, experienced employees that were absolutely suitable for roles that we are also recruiting. In example, in the global category, which means marketing, R&D, or other function like that. So we really see that this has also a positive impact, sometimes to get some knowledge that may not always be available. If I look at our situation, so if I take mainly the manufacturing side, about 5% of our organization is over 55 years old. So that means that if I look also in the 5 next years, I will have quite a certain number of people going on retirement. And it means that we need to prepare that, but not only, because it's about preparing people, and you were talking about gradual preparation. So I still feel that we should look at the intergeneration difference as an opportunity, as a chance, at something that is really, really valuable, and that actually also contribute a lot to the culture that you want to have in your company. But it's all a matter of saying it's not about being different. It's about how can we be complementary and how you can make sure that people connect. So as an example, we have, I call it the buddies programs. So it's when you have someone who's younger or like less experienced that is matching. So we create couples and people work together and interact together. So we are asking them not only to do that from an operational point of view or technical point of view, but it's to go beyond. It's to everything that you can learn, that it's actually different to what you may have experienced or that it's new to someone. And it works pretty well. And actually people are building relationship this way and are also really learning new things outside of their work. Something that we need also to consider is that we need, and mainly also in the operations, is that people, even though are, we say 55 years old, it's pretty young, ultimately, but we need to consider that there are activities that can be, let's say, painful, that are creating painfulness or that are raising penability. So it's also to say, okay, how can we work together with the youngest generation as we are operating in shift, instead of saying you do the 3 times 8 all the time, which means that some people may have to work during the night. We have agreement between people that would like to do several nights and the other one that wouldn't like to do the night shift, and therefore they all contract together and say, okay, you need maybe more space or you need to have a quiet rhythm, and myself, I'm very interested in maybe earning more and having 2 weeks in a row working during the night. So it's really about connecting people and also preparing people to have a second or last career after that.
Great, Emilie, thank you. Thank you very much. Very much about collaboration then, as I guess Tony was saying as well. Carlos, I wanted to bring you back in here. We've heard about these sort of real life examples and lessons from Tony and Emilie, but how does the data bear out on this topic of an aging workforce? Do you have a couple of sort of key data points that you can share?
Yeah, definitely. So the first thing is that the data shows exactly what Tony and Emilie were talking about. And but one interesting thing that we've noticed is that, so first of all, the past 7 years, the increase in the older workers in the sector has increased. So the number of people employed that are older in the sector has increased. But in the past 3 years, we've seen a stable rate for men, but an increasing rate for women. This comes with at the same time with the fact that women are so older women are high, their employment, there's a higher number of employed older women in the life sciences sector. So you would expect that this would also show that there's higher representation in more senior positions, but this is not the case. So it would be very interesting to also talk about this demographic group as key insights to share based on as well the experience of the panelists regarding that.
Carlos, thank you. Yes, actually, that's exactly our next topic. This other key demographic trend, which is the gender divide. And it sounds like it's a very nuanced picture based on the data you shared at the beginning as well. And as you said, the rate of women in the workforce is increasing. However, it's not a completely positive story, it seems, in terms of women's role within the life science industry in Europe. As they are often represented in leadership and also specialized technical positions. So Emilie, I wanted to go back to you now. Do you see a gender divide in terms of applicants, but as well as workers more broadly across the group?
Yes, so definitely we are seeing this as many other companies. We will mainly see that at the senior level, so in the leadership role, but also in the operation where we have operators. So they are where we see at the opposite in the middle management or also in the labs a very good representation in terms of gender diversity or woman representation. At Haleon, we do take the topic very seriously, but it's not only about quota. Yes, we do have some targets. We do have some expectation when it comes to have a better balance between the gender. But we look at it more about also creating an environment where everybody feels that they are in the good role at their place and that they feel respected for who they are despite of the gender. So it's a lot about promoting, it's about saying, okay, I have experienced that. I'm about to tell you my story because I want you also to live the same story. It's also to make sure that when we have recruitment, we educate our hiring manager. It's not about saying you need to have a woman, you need to have the best candidate, but you need to open your mind in order to really see the skills and the quality of everybody. It's also about helping women once they are in our company to really explore a wider range of activities and roles, not to say, okay, in the past it was, I was entitled to do this job and this is how it needs to be. No, it's like the door is open. You have a lot of possibility which is offered to you. It's about also continuous training. It's about helping also women to position themselves in some conversation. We know that women usually we are less good in negotiation, not only when it's salary negotiation, but sometimes when we need to argue, we all not always feel that comfortable. So it's about helping people to have the right conversation, the right message, but to grow and to feel that everybody has their place again. And something that works pretty well, it's about the mentorship. It's about saying, okay, we can all be guided. It's not meaning if you have someone who's helping you that you are not able to perform well or that you don't have the right skills. So mentorship is really something we promote and we encourage everybody at every level. As an example, I'm doing a lot of mentorship with some operator or the woman in logistics or in other area. And this at every level in the organization. Also, something that we need to be conscious of, it's women may from time to time, and again, it varies from one country to a country, but if I look at Switzerland, the way that childcare or school is set up is not made for everybody to work, or at least not the 2%. I'm experiencing that every day. It's about saying, okay, what can we offer to our employee in order to make their life easier, for them to be focused at work, to be able to do things that they like. So we have talked about before about the flexible working, but it's not only about that, it's about also providing some benefits that will encourage someone to say, okay, I'm earning a salary, I'm paying maybe childcare, but at the same time, I'm getting something else that makes me still good at the end of the month. But it's also really, like I was saying in introduction, it's creating the right environment. It's removing the stereotype of a woman that is not able to lift something when you are on the manufacturing line, or that ladies needs to be more technician, assistant versus the scientist or roles like that. So it's not one magic solution, but I think it's about education. It's about really creating the right culture and environment.
Great, thanks, Emilie. Yes, I'm sure lots of your comments have struck a chord with lots of people who are listening as well, sort of with these, I guess, family issues as well. Tony, I wanted to bring you back to the white paper now, though. Thinking about this issue of the gender divide, what are some of the key takeaways from the white paper? Just a couple to highlight.
I think one of the key things that strikes out to me, it was great to hear Emilie talk about some of the great things that are happening at Haleon. It feels almost like it's the elephant in the room, though. What could it be that's holding women back? I wonder. I'm not sure. Not every woman has children, okay? But when women have children and they take time away from work, they are from that point on behind their peer group in terms of the time spent at work, the career progression opportunities that are available to them. And we almost applaud ourselves as an industry, as a society almost, by saying, well, we'll make accommodations for when women return to work, for when parents return to work, and that's great. And when we look at companies from more than 50 years ago, companies used to be run for the benefit of the employees. The main purpose of a company was to provide protection and employment for the employees, and then some profit was spit out as a result. Things have changed, and now companies are run for profit, and the main thing is the bottom line, and that's the world that we now live in. But one thing I think we've just got to grasp the nettle and say, look, when women return to work after having children, we've got to fast track the career. Just like we fast track the careers of those people that we identify as early talent, we've got to be able to say, right, that's a missing. It could be 3 months, it could be 6 months, it could be a year, however long the period is. And it isn't right for every woman, but the opportunity should be there to say, do you know what? We will positively discriminate like a woman-only shortlist. We're not just going to put you back into the same place you were before in regards to where you are in your career path. You're going to get advancement. You're going to be moved further on because of it. Children are not a dirty word to business. It's absolutely what makes life run. If there was one thing the pandemic taught us, is we're all people, right? Someone's dog jumps up onto the table on a really important call, or someone walks past in the background on the call. Everyone is people. Lots of people bring children into the world. The weight of care predominantly falls on women within society, and I think as an industry and as a society, we've got to do far more to empower women returning to work to be able to advance their career. And I know that's not me drawing out things from the white paper, but it's something that I feel very passionate about and I wanted to share.
Thank you, Tony. Yes, for sure. I'm sure lots of people agree with you on those points as well that you raised. Just thinking now, we've touched on the three main topics from the white paper. So the gender divide, the skills gap, and the aging population. So I wanted to have a final question now for all of you, is how the industry can continue to drive progress in terms of building a workforce that meets the industry's needs today and going forward. Obviously, it's a big question, but we want to know what your key recommendations are for ensuring that companies foster talent in a sort of sustainable way. Franck, perhaps could we start with you?
Yes, thank you, Danielle. Okay, I will repeat myself just a bit. Remember what I said, look for skills rather than CV in the pharma background. Forget the CV, stuck on the skills. But first things, go for in their industry, etc. Recreate the entrepreneurship, more clusters, more startup spirit into your big machines. And as a third thing, because when I was hearing Emilie, you have probably a lot of excellent people to train, to retrain, to reskill, and to help them to grow into your company horizontally or vertically. That's not the point, but you have a lot with that. Consider your trainees, your apprentices, consider everyone who have a role in the company to build your future workforce and to look for your future talent. So that would be my point.
Great, thank you, Franck. Yes, I loved your points about the tech transfer skills in particular. Tony, what about you? Back to you. What's your sort of key recommendations?
Another brilliant soundbite from Franck. Skills, not CVs. It's people's skills and people's ability to be able to contribute. But what I would focus on, I think, is diversity. That diversity, not just focusing on women in leadership and women in the development of AI technologies, so that we can work out any potential biases right from the very beginning. But I think also that we have the collaboration that I talked about between the older and the younger generations, and also most importantly, engaging with the current workforce. Emilie touched on some of the brilliant things that Haleon are doing in regards to the current workforce, changing the shift patterns and things for people. I think you've got to talk to your people, that they are your absolute, best possible resource. So to skills map your organization and to find out, where are the people now and where do they want to go, and how can we match that with the organization's needs now and future needs for skills in new roles, and who are the people that want to move and who are the people that want to progress. And I know I've made it a big theme, but also role models, for young people, and role models for women in business, so that they can see this is a position that I can aspire to, and I can see that that is something that I can do. They're my key takeaways.
Great, Tony, thank you. Yes, it makes sense. Obviously, talking to your workforce is a very good place to start, I guess, with all of these challenges. Emilie, what about you? What are your key recommendations?
So I will say it's really about investing in our people, in our leader. So it's really to say that the world has changed around us, and it's to help our leaders to navigate through complex, but also sometimes very highly regulated environment. It's also to say leadership development, it's not for everybody the same. You need to do tailor-made, personalized plans, but you also need to allow people that not everybody is learning in the same way. It's also about helping managers or leaders to provide feedback, to talk to people, because this is how you make them grow, but also that you engage an organization that is diverse, which is young, which is gender diversity and everything else. But it's also to help people or leader to acknowledge that change is okay. It's cool, actually, because this is how a company grows, but how personally you are also going beyond, and you motivate, you engage, you take everybody with you on board. So it's really investing on our future leader.
Great, thank you, Emilie. So Carlos, thinking about what the other three panelists have just told us about their key recommendations. So we've got things like skills, not CVs, role models, talking to your workers, and investing in leaders. How do some of these, I guess, broader points align with the data that we see within the white paper?
Yeah, sure. So mainly like to reiterate what everyone said, but also with what the data is showing. So we've seen that in general, not just in life sciences, one size fits all is not the most efficient or optimal way to go. Employers need to be a bit agile and flexible depending on what their needs are, depending on different occupations. So the first recommendation is BBB. There's a right time to buy, there's a right time to build through upskilling and reskilling, especially when an employer is, for example, looking for a skill that is very hard to find in the market or has a very expensive salary premium. And there's the right time to borrow. So that's the first one. The second one, and I can't stress enough on this one, is this collaboration between public institutions, employers, and educational institutions, just because this is something that could maximize a workforce potential, and especially the future workforce that we have. Happy to talk about that another time in way more detail, but a lot of potential there. And finally, as Franck and Emilie were discussing at the first, incentivization to enter the life sciences industry. So that does not necessarily mean to increase salaries. That could be to increase compensation through total rewards, benefits, flexible work arrangements. Since COVID, we've seen that there's a lot of strain on the workforce, so it would be amazing for that adaptability to also reach the life sciences industry through this flexibility and incentivization. So that is what we see in the data as well.
Great, thanks, Carlos. Yes, that triple helix model that you talk about, that cooperation between public, private, and universities, we see in lots of sectors as well in our coverage. So now it is time to turn to audience Q&A. We've had a great discussion and we've obviously ran over time, which is inevitable with these things, but I think we might be able to squeeze in 2 questions. So thank you everyone for sending them in. We've got some great ones to choose from here. The first one that we're going to go with is for Emilie, and it is, what tangible steps has your company implemented to attract and retain young talent in the life sciences sector?
I'm really happy to be the lucky one to start. In Switzerland, you probably know that we have a strong apprenticeship program. So it's well established. It's recognized as the equivalence of some secondary studies. So this is another way of entering into the the business and the market and learning in a hybrid way. So this is something we do. We have about, in Switzerland, about 30 apprentices in various departments across all divisions. And then we are also doing something at Haleon, which is called FLP or graduate program. So that means that we take people after their uni, and then they spend usually between 2 and 3 years. And it's either to develop leadership skills or to become an expert in some area. So they have rotation, and so it allows people to be exposed in various situations and to grow internally. And then something that we do, and it's really about partnership, it's the internship that we do with various schools and university to say, okay, during a 6-month period, approximately, you come here, you do a project, and then it helps you building and finalizing your study. But it means that in order to have all this, we need to rethink the way we interact with the outside. You know, people don't go to job up like many of us will have done it before. It's about, you know, being on the social media. It's to capture the attention in the newspaper, when they take the train, or it's other things like that. But it's also really about saying that we offer flexibility, but also an environment where people and young talent feel valued, but at the same time, they can be themselves, they can be innovative, they can be creative. But to do that, you also need to have ways of working that might be different and that are adaptable to each young talent. And something that is very important, it's not only about attracting, is then how do you keep the contact? Because some may have to go back to their studies, others may have found another opportunity, but it's then how do you say, okay, don't forget us, and maybe in 2 years' time you come back. And so this is really creating connection before, during, and after.
Great, thank you, Emilie. And the next question, the person who the viewer has asked if Tony can answer it, if that's okay, Tony. And it is, what do you consider to be the most recurrent HR needs of life science companies in Europe? And also, how can they be addressed? We've only got a couple of minutes, so if we can just maybe keep the replies for about a minute, that would be great.
Oh, it might be tricky, but I'll try. The recurrent theme from customers that I talk to is about talent acquisition and retention, about getting the right skills into the business and about keeping hold of them. We've already talked about things that we can do in regards to the workplace to make the workplace feel a safer and more enjoyable place for young people to grow their careers. I think Emilie touched on the value proposition to approach the market. We do a lot of work with companies to be able to help them to show lots of the positive things that companies often have in place, but don't shout about loudly enough to the market to be able to attract talent to the company. The biggest piece of advice that we often give to companies is when we look at the application process that people have to go through, it's very clunky. It's not always enabled on mobile phones, and lots of young people entering the workforce, bizarrely to me, but they will apply for the most important job in their life and they'll do it working from their mobile phone instead of working from a PC. The black hole of recruitment can no longer exist. When people apply for positions with companies, we need to make sure that they are receiving a response that's positive and on message with your brand, that people have an enjoyable experience in applying for a role, that they're kept well informed, that they understand what's happening, and most importantly of all, the time. So sometimes when there's a little bit of reluctance in the marketplace, it can be difficult to be able to go from, you know, the interview happens on the 1st of January, the job offer ends up happening on the 31st of April. It's too long. We need to shorten that down, and we need to make sure that we are onboarding talent in a way that makes people feel comfortable and valued from the very beginning.
Great, thank you very much, Tony. And with that, we will have to wrap up, unfortunately. So thank you everyone for attending and for sending in such great questions. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to go through more of them. And also a big thank you to Tony, Emilie, Franck, and Carlos for such an insightful and thought-provoking discussion. I'm sure everyone will agree. Finally, thank you to GI Life Sciences for hosting such an insightful event. And for those interested in exploring this topic further, you will see the full Life Sciences European Workforce Outlook white paper, which is available for download in the post-event email that you will receive and on the dedicated webpage. It must be time to go because I'm about to lose my voice. So thank you all very much and wishing you a wonderful rest of the day. Goodbye.